My name is Soren Veilhart. I am 34 years old, I'm single, and I live alone in a small, quiet house. I bought this house all by myself on the east side of Cleveland, Ohio. It's not fancy, but it's mine and I like the peace and quiet. Before I continue, don't forget to subscribe and join the awesome community. Drop a comment below to tell me where you're watching from. One Friday afternoon, I was sitting at my desk, staring at my computer screen in the middle of a Zoom work meeting. I work as a senior forensic accountant, which means I look very closely at money and documents to make sure everything is correct. I was concentrating hard when my phone beeped. It was a Ring doorbell alert. That little sound made my heart skip a beat. I unmuted the Zoom call just long enough to glance at the phone screen and I froze. My brother's 2 kids were standing there on my front porch. Kalian, who is 4 years old, and Lyriel, who is only 2, were standing there with 2 small suitcases and a diaper bag. No adults. No car. Nothing. I couldn't believe my eyes. I didn't hear a car pull up. I didn't see anyone around. And there they were, my brother's kids, just standing there. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from my sister, Zephin. Hey sis, we're taking a quick 3-day trip to Vegas with mom and dad. Thanks for watching the kids. Back Monday. I stared at that message, feeling my jaw tighten. I typed back one single word, okay. I hit send. Then I looked back at the 2 little faces staring at my door. They had no idea what was about to happen. In 3 days, when the rest of the family came back, everything would be different. Nothing would be the same. I stepped outside and my stomach dropped. Kalian, 4 years old, was clutching his baby sister, Lyriel, who was only 2. The 2 small rolling suitcases and the diaper bag sat beside them. No car seat, no adult, nothing. I picked up Lyriel and held her tightly. She looked at me with big, scared eyes. I took Kalian's hand and pulled them inside before the neighbors could see. I wanted to make sure they were safe first. As soon as the door closed, I opened the Ring app on my phone. I had to see what had happened. The video was crystal clear. My parents, Corvian and Celara Veilhart, had pulled up in their car, dropped off the kids and their bags, and driven away without even knocking. They had timed it perfectly to happen in the middle of my Zoom call, so I couldn't answer the door fast enough. I put the kids down on the living room rug. Lyriel started crying for her mommy. Kalian just looked around, confused, like he didn't understand what was happening. I opened the fridge, hoping to find something to feed them. I realized I had nothing suitable for little kids. No baby food, no snacks, nothing. I found half a sleeve of Oreos and some milk that was still good. That became dinner. I gave them water in plastic cups because I didn't even have sippy cups. As they ate, I looked at my phone again. Zephin's text was still glowing on the screen like it was mocking me. I knew one thing for sure. I could not take care of them long term. My house had no crib, no booster seat, no spare diapers, no children's Tylenol, no toys. Nothing. I am 34, single, and the closest thing I have to a toy is a stress ball shaped like a baseball. I called the one person I trusted to help with something this crazy. Isolde Vey is my best friend from college, and she is now one of the smartest family law attorneys in Northern Ohio. She picked up the phone on the second ring. Soren, what's wrong? You never call me on a Friday night, she said. I put her on speaker and lowered my voice so the kids wouldn't hear. I told her everything. The porch drop-off, the Vegas text, the Ring video, and how I didn't have any supplies for them. She went silent for a few seconds, then spoke in her calm but serious voice, the kind she uses when she is about to take someone apart in court. Listen to me carefully, she said. Don't buy anything for the kids. Don't set up a playpen. Don't post pictures. If you start acting like their caregiver, the court could say you accepted guardianship by default. We have until Monday morning to make sure that doesn't happen. She told me to save every frame of the video, take screenshots of the text thread, and start a timeline of events. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. Abandoning kids on someone else's property without permission is a felony in Ohio, she said. They just handed you the perfect proof. I looked down at Kalian, who had chocolate smeared across his cheek, and Lyriel, who had fallen asleep with her head on my thigh. 2 innocent kids were caught in the middle of my family's reckless games. Isolde kept talking about deadlines, laws, and emergency court hearings. I wrote everything down on the back of an envelope because I didn't want to wake Lyriel by reaching for a notebook. By the time we hung up, it was almost 9 o'clock. The kids were exhausted. I carried them to the guest room, laid them on the queen bed, and surrounded them with pillows so they wouldn't roll off. I sat in the dark hallway outside the door watching the Ring video on loop. That night I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the last time I had bailed my family out. 6 years ago when I co-signed a house loan to save them from losing their home. I never imagined they would one day dump their grandchildren on my doorstep like unwanted packages. Saturday morning came quickly. I knew I had to make my first move in a fight I never asked for. I sat at my desk with a mug of cold coffee and opened the county property portal we use at work. I am a senior forensic accountant, so I have access to records most people never see. I typed in the address of the old family house on East 125th, where my parents still lived with Zephan. The deed popped up immediately. 6 years ago I had co-signed as a joint owner so they could refinance and avoid losing the house. I remembered flying in, signing at the title company and flying out the same day thinking I was helping keep a roof over everyone's head. What I discovered next made my hands shake. After I left, they had taken out a home equity line of credit for $380,000. My signature was nowhere on the new loan. In Ohio, every joint owner must sign for it to be valid. They had either forged the application or left me out entirely. It was mortgage fraud. I looked at the credit report attached to the loan. The balance was maxed out and payments had stopped 9 months earlier. There was a bright red final notice from the bank, and a sheriff's sale was scheduled in exactly 60 days. I forwarded everything to Isolde. She called back in minutes. "Soren, this is a slam-dunk fraud case. The bank will be very interested. We'll file an emergency motion Monday morning to remove your name from the house and freeze any further draws. I'm also drafting a temporary restraining order against your parents and Zephan for financial abuse. Send me every screenshot you have." I spent the next 4 hours building the evidence package. I downloaded the full Ring video in 4K, exported the text messages with timestamps, pulled the deed history, the loan files, and even the original notary journal from 6 years ago, showing I had never signed the new loan. Every piece fits together like a perfect puzzle of betrayal. While the files were uploaded, I walked down the hall to check on the kids. Kalian was coloring on printer paper with highlighters, and Lyriel was stacking coasters into a wobbly tower. They looked happy for the moment, but I knew it wouldn't last. I had maybe 48 hours before my family realized I wasn't going to play along this time. Isolde texted again around noon. "Motion is ready. File first thing Monday. Whatever you do, don't let them pressure you into keeping the kids longer. The longer they stay, the harder it is to prove abandonment." I stared at the foreclosure notice one last time. 60 days. That house was the only thing my parents had left, and they had gambled it away without telling me. All the years I helped them with money, covered overdraft fees, and paid light bills so the kids wouldn't sit in the dark. It had never been enough for them. I closed the laptop and for the first time in 24 hours, I felt something stronger than panic. I felt clarity. Cold, steady clarity. They thought they could drop 2 children on my doorstep and disappear to Vegas like I was their personal babysitter. They were about to learn exactly how expensive that mistake would be. Saturday afternoon, I made the call I never thought I would have to make. I dialed the Ohio Child Protective Services hotline. I gave my name and address and explained exactly what happened. 2 minor children had been left on my porch without my consent, without car seats and without any supplies. I stayed calm and sent the Ring video while on the line. Less than 4 hours later, a white county sedan pulled up outside. 2 caseworkers got out, Miss Avenra, the investigator, and Mr. Jorvik, her supervisor. They introduced themselves politely, asked if they could come inside, and immediately started taking photos of the living room, the kitchen cabinets, and the hallway closet. They noted the complete absence of diapers, formula, childproof locks, or even a proper bed for a toddler. They asked questions, took notes, and made sure everything was recorded carefully. I answered all their questions truthfully, calmly, and as clearly as possible. Kalian colored quietly in the corner while Lyriel slept on my lap. For the first time in a long time, I felt like there was someone on my side, someone who understood how serious this all was. The rest of Saturday passed slowly. I kept watching the kids, making sure they were safe, fed, and comfortable. Every so often I would glance at the foreclosure notice, the Ring footage, or the loan documents to remind myself why I had to stay strong. My parents had made a huge mistake, and this time I wasn't going to cover for them. By Sunday evening I had everything ready for Monday morning. Every document, every screenshot, every piece of evidence was neatly organized. I even made extra copies for Isolde. The kids were tired but happy in their little routines. Kalian had learned to stack blocks into towers, and Lyriel had learned to climb onto the couch safely with my help. I sat back and realized something important. Even though this was all my family's fault, the kids didn't deserve to be scared or hungry. For the first time I felt a sense of control. I was no longer panicking. I had a plan. And with Isolde's help the court would see the truth. When they saw the video on my laptop their faces changed completely. They had been calm and professional at first, but now their expressions became serious and worried. Ms. Avenra, one of the caseworkers, knelt down to talk to Kalian gently. She asked him questions in a soft voice, trying not to scare him. Kalian said that Grandma and Grandpa had told him that Aunt Tier would take care of them for a few days. Lyriel, on the other hand, just hugged a pillow tightly and kept whispering "Mama, Mama, Mama," over and over again. The workers looked at each other in a way I had seen before. I had seen it on TV during fraud investigations, and I had seen it once in real life when adults did something very wrong. It was the look that meant, this is now a very serious problem and we have to act fast. They explained what would happen next. Because the children had been abandoned and I was refusing to take care of them officially due to not having the resources to do it safely, the county had to act immediately. They said they would file an emergency dependency petition that very night. That's a formal paper that asks a judge to decide who can care for the kids temporarily. The judge would have a special hearing within 72 hours to decide temporary custody. Until the judge made the decision, the children would go to a licensed emergency foster home, which is a safe place where trained adults could care for them right away. I asked if I could keep them until Monday so they wouldn't have to move houses twice in a short time. Ms. Avenar shook her head. State rules are clear, she said. If a relative refuses to be the official caregiver, the placement has to happen tonight. It's the law. It actually protects you legally. She handed me a form titled, Declination of Kinship Caregiver Status. I signed it without hesitation because I knew it was the right thing to do. While Mr. Jorvik completed paperwork in his car, Ms. Avenra packed the 2 small suitcases again, making sure nothing was left behind. She let me add a small note on a sticky paper for whoever would watch the kids next. I wrote down their bedtime routines, favorite snacks, and the stuffed dinosaur that Kalian could not sleep without. When it was time to leave, Kalian started crying and held onto my leg tightly. I knelt down, hugged him as hard as I could, and promised that I would see him very soon. Lyriel reached out to me with both arms, and my heart felt like it was breaking in half, but I had to hand her over. The caseworkers buckled them into the county-issued car seats, and they drove away just as the street lights started to glow. I stayed on the porch long after the tail lights disappeared, feeling a mix of relief and guilt. I felt relieved because I had drawn the hardest boundary of my life, finally standing up for what was right. But I also felt guilty because 2 innocent kids were paying the price for the adults' mistakes. Back inside, the house felt too quiet. I poured a glass of wine I didn't drink and opened my laptop again. The CPS intake report was already in the system. It said, Case Mtorn 2025 D44817, Emergency Removal Authorized, Shelter Care Hearing scheduled for Monday at 9 a.m. Isolde. My helper had been carbon copied on the courtesy email and immediately texted back, perfect. This locks in the abandonment charge. See you at the courthouse. I closed every blind, set the security alarm, and sat in the dark living room replaying the day in my mind. In less than 24 hours, my family had managed to commit child abandonment and mortgage fraud in the same weekend. And for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't going to clean up their mess. Monday morning arrived like a storm. At 8:17 a.m., a rental SUV screeched into my driveway. Out spilled Zephan, Zyra, Veilhart, his wife and my parents, before the engine had even stopped. They didn't knock. The front door flew open and all 4 charged straight into my living room, shouting over each other. Where are my kids? Zyra screamed first, her face red and mascara already running from crying. Zephan shoved past her. Soren, what the hell did you do? CPS just called us in Vegas. Dad's voice boomed behind them. You had no right to involve the state. Mom was crying, clutching her purse like a shield. I stayed seated on the couch, hands folded in my lap, and let them go through the first wave of rage. I had expected this exact scene and I was ready. Before anyone could touch me, 2 county cars pulled up outside. Ms. Avenra from Saturday stepped out with a sheriff and a process server. They walked in calm and deliberate. The sheriff announced, You are hereby served with emergency dependency petitions and an ex parte temporary restraining order prohibiting contact with Soren Veilhart or any attempt to access her financial accounts. The TTRO had been granted at 7:45 that morning by the judge magistrate. Zaira lunged forward. You can't keep me from my children. The deputy blocked her path without raising his voice. Ma'am, step back. Violation is immediate arrest. At that moment the second car door opened across the street. Thalric and Elindra Thalric, Zaira's parents, climbed out of a silver sedan that had clearly just landed from Tampa. Elindra's face was stone, and Thalric carried a leather briefcase like he was heading into battle. Zaira saw them and ran straight into her mother's arms, sobbing about evil aunts and stolen babies. Isolde appeared on my porch at the same time, heels clicking, folder in hand. She didn't raise her voice. Everyone inside the house needs to leave the property now. The restraining order is active. Deputies will escort you off if necessary. Zephan spun toward me, veins bulging in his neck. This is insane. You're destroying our family over money. Dad tried the guilt route. Soren, honey. We can fix this. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Mom just kept repeating, please, please, like a broken record. I finally stood. My voice came out steady and colder than I expected. No. You abandoned 2 children on my porch, committed mortgage fraud with my name, and thought a weekend in Vegas would make it all disappear. The state is involved because you broke the law, not because I'm cruel. The restraining order is in place because I'm done being your emergency exit. Thalric Bexley spoke for the first time, low and clipped. Zaira, get in the car. We flew here to help get the grandchildren back, not to watch you make everything worse. Zaira stared at her father in disbelief. Elindra put an arm around her daughter's shoulders and guided her toward their rental without another word to me. The deputy handed each adult their copies of the paperwork. Within 5 minutes, the driveway was empty except for Isolde and the lingering smell of burnt rubber. She closed the door behind the last deputy and exhaled. That went exactly as planned. Shelter care hearing is in 40 minutes. Let's go. That same Monday afternoon the confrontation spilled right back onto my front lawn. The shelter care hearing had ended with temporary custody awarded to the county, and the magistrate ordered all parties to my house for a supervised safety assessment before anyone could leave town. 2 CPS social workers, Ms. Avenra and a new senior worker named Ms. Cyrilis, stood on my porch with clipboards while the deputy kept watch from the sidewalk. Everyone else had been allowed back on the property for exactly 30 minutes. I opened my laptop on the coffee table and turned the screen so the entire room could see. The first slide was the video footage from Friday. The second showed the county property record proving my name on the deed. The third was the bank package with the forged notary page. The fourth was the bank's foreclosure judgment. The fifth and final file was a spreadsheet I had built that morning, tracing every withdrawal from the home equity line straight to casino chips in Las Vegas, many signed by Zaira. Silence fell so heavy you could hear the refrigerator hum. Zephan's face went white. Dad stared at the floor. Mom covered her mouth with both hands. Thalric and Elindra Thalric reacted the hardest. Elindra gasped and grabbed the arm of the couch to steady herself. Thalric's jaw locked so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. Zaira tried to speak first. Those withdrawals were for the kids for daycare. Thalric cut her off without raising his voice. Stop. We paid those daycare bills ourselves every month. Don't lie to me, Zaira. That was when Zephan exploded. He took 2 steps toward me, fists clenched, eyes wild. You're destroying our whole family. All this over a stupid loan. I didn't flinch. It's not stupid when my signature was never on it. That's felony fraud and you knew it. Zaira dropped to her knees in the middle of my living room rug, tears streaming. How can you be so heartless? They're just little kids. Soren, Kalian keeps asking for his mommy. The words hit hard, but I had prepared for them too. I looked straight at her. They're in foster care because you and Zephan left them on a stranger's porch with no car seats and no plan. I protected them the only legal way I had. Elindra turned to her daughter, voice trembling but firm. We flew here thinking we would help you fight for custody. But if you've been gambling away the house those babies were supposed to grow up in. She couldn't finish the sentence. Thalric finished it for her. Then we have no choice but to testify against our own daughter. The children come first. Always. Zaira let out a sound I hope I never hear again. half scream, half sob, and collapsed against her mother's legs. Elindra didn't push her away, but she didn't comfort her either. She just stared at the evidence on the screen like she was seeing her child for the first time. Dad finally tried the old tactic. Soren baby. We'll pay it all back. Just give us time. I shook my head slowly. You've had 6 years. The bank sale is in 59 days. I'm not waiting anymore. Ms. Hargrove cleared her throat. This meeting is over. All adults will get a letter about the next hearing. No one can talk to Ms. Veilhart until the restraining order is reviewed. One by one, everyone left the room. Zephan stopped at the door and gave me a glare that looked full of pure hate. It was the kind of look that made you feel small and scared at the same time. Zaira had to be almost carried to the car by her parents because she was too weak and upset to walk on her own. Mom was still crying, big tears running down her face. Dad looked like he had aged 20 years in just 1 hour. The weight of everything that had happened this week seemed to have landed on him all at once. The door closed. The house became quiet again. The kind of quiet that feels strange and heavy, almost like the walls are holding their breath. Isolde, who had been standing behind me, put a hand gently on my shoulder. You okay? She asked. I let out a long breath that I felt like I had been holding since Friday. Yeah, I said. For the first time in years I actually am. It was a small, shaky, yeah, but it felt like the first spark of hope I'd felt in a long time. 10 weeks later, everything finally caught up to the adults at once. I was on a work conference call when my phone lit up with a local news alert. It said the Cuyahoga County Sheriff had sold the house at 1427 East 125th Street. The house sold for $58,000 less than what was owed. That very afternoon, the bank locked the doors and put a notice on the house. By that evening, Dad sent a single photo of 2 motel rooms stuffed full of boxes. No words were needed, the picture said it all. Everything they had once called home was now crammed into temporary rooms. 3 days later, Isolde forwarded me the divorce papers. It was Zephan Veilhart versus Zaira Veilhart. The reason listed was irreconcilable differences, which basically means they said they could no longer get along. The section about who would take care of the kids was left blank because neither of the parents had passed the mandatory home study that the court requires for custody. The report from the caseworker was harsh and blunt. It said that they had unstable homes, more than $200,000 in gambling debt, and both parents had tested positive for drugs during court-required screenings. Their parental rights weren't terminated yet, but all services meant to help them reunite with the children were officially suspended. While Zephan and Zaira were busy pointing fingers at each other, Thalric and Elindra Thalric quietly did everything that needed to be done. They hired the best child welfare lawyer in Tampa, traveled back to Cleveland every other week, completed all the classes the county required, and turned the spare bedroom of their retirement condo into a perfect nursery. They passed the home study with flying colors. The kids had been living with them since week 6 under a temporary kinship placement and no one fought it. The children were finally in a safe and stable home. The final permanency hearing was scheduled for the Friday before Labor Day. I drove downtown alone, parked in the Justice Center garage and took the elevator to the 15th floor. The courtroom was almost empty. Only the guardian, the assistant prosecutor, Isolde, the Thalrics and I were present. Zephan and Zaira were there too, sitting on opposite sides of the aisle, looking like they hadn't slept in weeks. Their hair was messy, their eyes puffy, and they looked completely defeated. The magistrate didn't waste any time. She looked over the file for about 5 minutes, then looked up and said, "Based on the evidence, the parents have failed to fix the conditions that caused the children to be removed. The maternal grandparents have demonstrated stability, sobriety, and an unwavering commitment to the children's best interests. Permanent custody is granted to Thalric and Elindra Thalric, effective immediately." Zaira made a sound like someone had punched her in the stomach. Zephan just stared straight ahead, not moving, not even blinking. Neither of them appealed the decision. The judge's words were final. After the hearing, the Thalrics asked if they could speak to me in the hallway. Elindra's eyes were red but steady. "We want you to know the kids are happy," she said softly. "Kalian started preschool last week and Lyriel is saying new words every day. They ask about Aunt Soren sometimes." She paused. "We'd like you to stay in their lives in whatever way feels right for you." Thalric added quietly, "You did the hardest thing anyone could do. You saved them when no one else would. We'll never forget that." I nodded, my throat tight. Send me pictures. I'll send birthday presents, I said. We exchanged hugs. They felt awkward and necessary at the same time, the kind of hug that says a lot without saying a single word. Then they walked away, holding hands, officially parents again at 68 and 66 years old. Driving home, I passed the old house one last time. A bright orange foreclosure sticker still covered the front door. The lawn was already overgrown. The house looked smaller than I remembered, like all the life that had once lived inside it had evaporated into thin air. That night, I poured a glass of wine, sat on my porch and let myself feel everything I had been holding back for 10 straight weeks. Relief that the kids were safe. Grief for the family that no longer existed. And something that felt dangerously close to peace. The aftermath wasn't pretty. Dad and Mom were sleeping in separate motel rooms paid for by church vouchers. Zephan had taken a warehouse job and was living in a tiny studio apartment that smelled like ramen and regret. Zaira had moved back to Florida with nothing but the clothes she wore to court. But Kalian and Lyriel were asleep in bunk beds painted pale blue, under a roof that would never be gambled away. They were safe. They were loved. They were home. And for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't the emergency fund, the cosigner, or the cleanup crew. I was just me. And that was finally enough. 10 months later, everything was finally settled. The civil fraud case against my parents and the bank wrapped up quietly in federal court on a Thursday morning. The judge ruled that the helilock was invalid because my signature had never appeared on any page. $350,000 of debt disappeared from my credit report overnight. I kept only the original $30,000 I had knowingly co-signed 6 years earlier and set up a payment plan that would be gone in 3 years. When the clerk handed me the certified order, I felt the last chain fall off my ankles. I also made another decision that week. I blocked every number, every email, every social media account connected to Dad, Mom, Zephan, and Zaira. No angry voicemails. No tearful apologies. No promises of "we'll pay you back someday." I changed my mailing address to a private box and installed a new Ring camera that deletes anything from unrecognized faces. Complete radio silence. The only connection I left open was with Thalric and Elindra Thalric. Every birthday and Christmas, a package shows up at their door for Kalian and Lyriel. Books, Lego sets, dresses with matching hair bows. Whatever they are into that year. Elindra sends photos back. Kalian missing his 2 front teeth holding a new bike. Lyriel asleep on a unicorn blanket I picked out. Those pictures live in a folder on my phone labeled Family Safe. Nothing else. Dad ended up in a small senior housing unit. Mom works nights cleaning offices and sleeps in her car when the shelter is full. Zephan's paycheck goes straight to child support he will never catch up on. Zaira moved into a halfway house after a 30-day rehab that nobody asked her to complete. None of them have stable addresses long enough for me to send mail even if I wanted to. Meanwhile, I got promoted to Director of Forensic Investigations, bought new furniture that nobody else picked out, and started pottery classes on Tuesday nights just because I finally could. My house is quiet. My credit score is the highest it's ever been. My emergency fund is growing instead of disappearing. The biggest lesson I carry isn't about laws or fraud. It's simpler and harsher. Never turn yourself into someone else's aim. The moment you do, people stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as a balance. They can take from you whenever they feel lucky. One day the account runs dry and they will blame you for not having more. I learned the hard way that protecting children sometimes means protecting yourself first because nobody else will. Kalian and Lyriel will grow up calling Thalric and Elindra Mom and Dad. They'll never remember the motel nights, the courtroom, or the aunt who disappeared from their daily lives. And that's exactly how it should be. They are safe. They're loved. They are free from the chaos that created them. That is the only victory that matters.